All right. Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening. Whatever time it is when you hear this message, I pray that you're poised to receive, to accept, and to respond to words of wisdom. Hashem. So when my children were small, like small from birth, really, I was very adamant about screening their environment. I screened and scrutinized everything that they consumed. The foods that they ate, what they drank, what they watched on television, what movies they went to, um, everything. I scrutinized it, and I didn't scrutinize it to the extent that I wanted to totally shelter them or screen out any form of impurity, for example, or anything that wasn't 100% aligned with my own values. It wasn't to that extent. It was just so that I could measure the things that were coming in, and I could help how do you say, help them make sense of what they had seen, what they had experienced, where they had been, etc. And at the time it was very challenging because even though my children grew up in the San Francisco Bay Area, explicitly in Oakland, which is probably more progressive than most of the country. I was still a little bit left, so to speak, of even mainstream life. Partially because I'm black, but additionally because I am an Orisha devotee, and so I had to put that extra filter on everything because let's say, for example, you start going into environments where people are talking about organic foods, or they're talking about um, farming and gardening and stuff like that. It tends to be mostly white people who are there, and they have their own political, social, cultural, historical perspectives, which I don't necessarily agree with. We might be all here talking about sustainable gardening in our yards, but for totally different reasons, right? Our perspectives and our philosophies for doing that, our desired outcomes for doing that, are radically different. But we do share this particular interest, and so it's cool that I'm there. But I need to be scrutinizing what's being said and done in the presence of my children because I'm doing it in a certain way, and I want them to understand how I'm doing it, what I want them to take from it, what I want them to develop into as a result of these experiences. All right. So, with that in mind, um, I know that my friends, my family members, you know, um, they may or may not be fully on board with what I'm doing, and they're going to oppose it in a variety of different ways. Some people are going to oppose it by being kind of silly. You're going to get a lot of that. People make ridiculous jokes. They're constantly laughing. They're, ha ha. Everything is, you know, a way to justify them not doing what I want them to do. I reject that. Yeah, we can laugh and joke. Ha, that's funny. Yeah, it's hard to say that. But we're going to do it that way. We're going to do it the way I want it to be done. Otherwise, we're not doing it. Right? I can't hold you hostage, but I don't have to do what you're doing. It's just because you want to make a joke and you know what I mean, that's your way of opting out. That's not my problem. Those are my children, and they're going to do it the way I want them to do it. End of story. Other people would try to, project fear. Oh, you know, their whatever their limitations are and whatever makes them afraid to go beyond the city limits, they're gonna try to put that off on me. Oh yeah, I'm sorry that you feel that way. That's terrible. Sounds like you really are, uh had a rough go out there in the world, but that's not my problem. And that's not gonna be my child's problem. They're gonna be out there, and they're gonna be out there representing me, and they're gonna do it the way I want them to do it. The fact that you don't want to go and you don't want your children to do that and you don't want them to be exposed to ABC, I understand. Not my problem, though. Not my problem. If you would like me to help you to do what I do with my children, I'll help you. But the fact that you don't want to have your children eat this way, or you don't want your children to watch this kind of programming, and you don't want them to be a part of these ceremonies, that's not my problem. And I'm not going to entertain your problem, because we're talking about me and my children, right? And in those times, it was difficult because, you're going against the grain. I was going against the grain, and I was meeting all kinds of opposition, and it could come to a real heightened point at points like birthdays and holidays and special events, where people really feel like, the way we express ourselves and celebrate this is by, having these kinds of cakes and these kind of ice creams and watching these kind of shows and doing these kinds of things. And, you know, I'll do it. We're going to have our own fun. We're going to have our own party, but we're going to do it in my way. Right. So this is kind of abstract, but I want to make it so that you understand that I am clear about the fact that when you are in the beginning of doing something and you're taking a stance that is either outside of the norm or even contradicts the norm, you look crazy, right? Not in the clinical sense, but right, socially speaking, you look very odd to the people around you, and you look suspicious even to the people who care about you, and the people who you really want to be a part of what you're doing, the people who you really want to invest in what you're doing, right? You may look really, really crazy to them. Okay. But I want you to understand that even though you're the only one who's taking that position, it appears that you're off track. But appearances do deceive. Appearances do deceive. Things are not always the way they look. And just because the majority of the people are looking through a certain lens doesn't make it real, doesn't make it true, doesn't make it right for you and your family, your vision for the future. You got to recognize that, right? And another piece of the equation is that from the perspective of seeing things, as it pertains to a lifetime, most people do not have the tools that are necessary to adequately see or perceive what they're actually experiencing, what's in front of them, right? The biggest tool that people don't have is time. See, most people don't have a lifelong time frame to be able to see, oh, if you start a life and you train a person in this way from infancy, then by the time they reach adulthood, they're going to be like this. Most people don't have that. Why? Because most people are part of the mainstream. Most people's parents and their grandparents and their great grandparents have just been a part of the mainstream, and they only know what it looks like, for example, to have a job that you go to and you sit at your desk and you take your assignment and you get paid every 2 weeks. And most people only know that. They don't know what it looks like to start your own business. They don't know what it looks like to be born into a business, into a business family, and to live out your whole life working independently, producing, distributing, selling, organizing, managing your own natural gifts and talents. Most people don't have that experience. They haven't seen their parents and their grandparents and their great grandparents live that way. So they have no way of being able to see what you're doing. They have no way to be able to properly assess what you're doing. So you can't live by what public opinion says. They don't know what they're talking about. They don't know what you're doing. They see what you're doing, and they might be able to tell you the sequence of events, that first you did this and then you did that, but they don't know what it looks like. They don't know the trajectory of your activity. They don't know. Do not allow public opinion to sway you when it comes to you living the culture. Do not allow public opinion to sway you when it comes to living the culture. Sometimes even the people who you start the journey with will get afraid and they'll pull out halfway. Right? I've been there, I've done that. Hey, people who I invested with, hey, we're starting this journey together. and we're going to do this. This is our way of life. This is our vision. But when it actually comes out and you start seeing the results, you start seeing, for example, you start raising children who are autonomous and self-motivated and self-actualized, and they're teenagers, they're young adults, but you're an adult and you're not prepared for that. You haven't really prepared your mind and your your skill set to deal with a fully functioning whole adult, or whole human being who is not an adult. That can shut you down, and you will revert to trying to control that person instead of upgrading your own skill set. And so what do? You opt out. People will opt out of the movement. They'll opt out of the project because it actually produces something that they weren't prepared to deal with. So I understand is what I'm trying to say. I've been there. I've done that. It's not easy. Sometimes it's not pleasant, but the tradition is the tradition, and it works generation after generation after generation because people stick to the course, even though appearances deceive. It looks really messy sometimes. But if you stay the course, then you'll be able to say with total certainty, this works. And I'm gonna go and I'm gonna do it again. When given the opportunity to reinvest in the culture, I'm gonna reinvest. Right. And so I know this because I have produced students, and I've seen my students begin like my own children, like my own biological children. In the beginning, I'm telling you, hey, don't get roped into the beads, pots, and titles. Trust and believe. Everybody else is gobbling up beads, pots, and titles like little children eating candy on the playground. But trust me, just like those kids, their teeth are gonna be rotten by the time they're 12. Those children, they won't be able to their functions won't be in order because they're not feeding themselves properly. Those children will not understand and know what it feels like when you eat certain foods and you drink certain quality of water, how it affects your thinking, how it affects your mood, let alone how it affects your physical performance. If you don't know what that is like, then you won't understand why eating McDonald's and Burger King and drinking soda and all this stuff is having a negative effect on your performance. You won't know if you don't have that ability to discern. So I tell my students to do it the way I want them to do it because I know with absolute certainty, if you follow the way that I set forward, you are going to achieve something that none of your peers will understand and will have experienced. You will distinguish yourself not just as different. It's not just that you don't do what other people do. It's the quality of your existence is your own. You know your own natural abilities. You know your natural state of being. Then you get to deliberately choose certain things. And when you choose certain things and they have an effect on you, you understand, oh, when I add this element, it affects me this way. When I take this element away, it affects me that way. I understand how I can now measure and be very deliberate about how much of this I take, when I take it, how often I take it, when I put it to the side, when I absolutely positively reject it. Nope, I don't do that. I don't want that right now. Nope, I can't go there right now. No, that's not part of my program at this moment. You'll know because you have that certainty, that clarity. You're not deceived by just, the outward appearances or the immediate effects of things. All right. So now this is really pertinent to me within the School of Orisha Studies because in our most recent Itadogun, the symbol of our Odu is what we call the rope of continuity. And the rope of continuity advises you that appearances deceive, right? Appearances deceive. And the only way for you to appreciate how appearances deceive is for you to engage in a mental practice, which is called the rope of continuity. What do I mean? When, continuity suggests a continuum, there's an unbroken connectivity that links all things, all your experiences. right? So when you're at the highest point of your experience, when everything is good, when everything is sunny and everything is fulfilled, you remember what it's like to be unfulfilled, to be desolate, to be in isolation, to be dealing with loss and deficiency. Likewise, when you are experiencing deficiency, when you're at a low point, when everything is empty and you're alone, you remember what it's like to be surrounded by support, to be replete with all resources, to have it all going for you, right? So you remember, you stay present with where you are, whether if it's the high point or the low point. You know that, but you remember the other. You're fully conscious of what it means to experience the other extreme. And what does it do? It serves as a counterbalance and keep you on an even keel, keep you level headed. If you're high or if you're low, you maintain level headedness because you see the continuity. What's the continuity? Wherever you go, there you are. If you're at the low point, you're still the same person you were who when you were at your high point. When you're at your high point, you're still the same person. It is one consciousness that unifies all your experiences. And so you need to the more broadly you can point your awareness to different points of consciousness within yourself, the more evenly you're going to be. Right? That's what the rope of continuity teaches you to practice. All right. That is what will allow you to escape the deception of appearances, right? Because now your emotions and the sensation of the moment, whether it's a high or a low moment, those aren't distracting you. You're keeping your eyes focused exactly on where you are and what you're doing and where you have been and what you have always been doing. Okay, which is fulfill your destiny, which is to deliver on the ancestral promise. That's what you're ultimately doing, helping to bring about the good condition. Okay, and that looks a variety of different ways over time. But the rope of continuity is what helps you keep focus and allow the highs and lows only to feed your focus. It only helps clarify your focus. All right. And so the key here is helping to facilitate your ability to choose. See, when your children are young, you have to be very scrutinizing of what they consume because they're too young to be able to make those wise decisions on their own. A young child is too young to determine how much sugar, how much candy, how many cakes, how many cartoons, how many hours of television, how many games, how many, right? They can't discern that. And so you can't put that in their hands. It's irresponsible for you as an adult to bombard them with all that stuff. You have to you have to be very, very limited, if not exclusionary, of all of those different things until they reach a certain developmental stage. And then you start to introduce it strategically so that they can be discerning and then they can start to make wise decisions on their own about how much candy, how much soda, how many hours of television, how many hours of games. You know what I mean? They have to be able to manage themselves in that regard, but you've got to position them to do so. Right? You give them developmentally appropriate choices. Likewise, within your own spiritual development, you've got to facilitate developmentally appropriate choices. Right? So this is why you have a teacher. You have a teacher who helps make sure that you're not entertaining certain things at the beginning of your spiritual career. There's certain stuff that's not even on your radar in the first 5 years of of your practice. There's certain things it's not, just don't even entertain that. Don't even introduce that in the beginning. Right? Learn what your spirit is. Learn how to engage with your spirit. Understand who you are and what you come to the table with first. Get a real good, clear sense of who you are first. Then you can start introducing different kinds of rituals, different kinds of ceremonies, different kinds of icons. When it is developmentally appropriate and you can discern and choose People aren't just telling you, oh yeah, you're a Yemoja. Oh yeah, you're Shango. Oh yeah, you should be a Babalawo. Oh yeah. And you just take. But you have no way of discerning what this is and how it should work. Right? So appearances do deceive. It may look like when you're being deprived, oh, such a terrible thing. But over time, you're going to be able to look back and say, oh, I'm so glad I took my time and developed myself from the inside out and from the bottom up and wasn't just a consumer, right? Over consuming all kinds of things. All right. So this is particularly important and pertinent to the leaders. This is a message to the leaders. I'm making a call out to all the leaders, all the people who are determined to improve the world through positive influence. This is a message for you. Find out how Obafemi Origunwa and the Orisha Lifestyle Academy can help you start living the medicine that will heal your life and heal the lives of those who you are destined to serve. Visit me at obafemio.com or orishalifestyle.com and get yourself enrolled in one of my courses. Get the literature. All of my books are orientated from this exact same perspective. It's all about an inside out developmental process. So you can rest assured that anything that you consume from me is intended to help to build you from the inside out, to help you come into contact with your natural gifts and talents and your ability to make a more meaningful contribution to the people and the causes that matter most in your life. Let's get busy. Let's start doing this. And I look forward to working with you. Bye for now. Odabo.